My name's Corey and Anand.
Owais, Ahmad.
And I'm a partner and director of strategy and product for the company.
And I am the president and co-founder at West Agile Labs. I like to oversee everything that happens here and make sure things succeed.
Excellent. So what is a digital product agency? And that is what we are talking about today. So we have a client comes in our office and has an idea. I truly believe that ideas come from, roughly 3 different buckets. You've got that spontaneous idea. You're in the shower, you're on your bike, you're walking your cat, and boom, you have a great idea. The only reason I say walking your cat, because I live in San Francisco, and there are a lot of people that walk cats. Right. So, kind of strange. But, so then what you do is then you have got that insider idea. And the insider idea is where you're working at a company, you work at a product, and you realize, aha, I have this great idea that I can do something better. So you want to go do that. Then you have the deliberate idea. That idea where you're going to quit your job, you're going to be an entrepreneur, and you just got to go find that spark in that idea. Or you have a half-baked product. So you're sitting in our room with us, and that's where we start going through the validation and the consulting phase of our strategy. I'm sorry, we went through this for a little bit. Perfect. And the idea behind West Agile Labs, sorry I skipped a slide, is we are a end-to-end design and development agency. So we help consult, give you strategy, we do design, and then we also facilitate all the development onshore and offshore. And at the end of the day, we like to create ideas, build products, and scale businesses. So going back to the idea and being able to, we're going to head to the next one, please, is defining the problem. And when we define the problem, we like to create a framework for the problem. And it's not just identifying the idea, but it's also identifying who it's going to impact, the customer, the target market. What does a business model look like? And from there, when we start to framework the idea, we start to validate the idea. And by that, it's talking to people, it's understanding who that customer is. Great ideas is to go in, networking events where there's a safe environment where entrepreneurs can talk to each other about your idea and start getting live and real data and feedback on your idea. We've all been startup founders, and we've realized that there are times when you just don't talk about your idea enough to people. Get some feedback, start listening. I think that's the number one thing that we always tell people is just listen. Throw out the idea and listen what people are saying about it. And from there, we start to come up with a structure and also executing a roadmap. And so part of our creative strategy is doing different exercises, such as a lean canvas model. We start looking at some of the design sprints that we're going to do, but also breaking it down to the fundamental components that are going to help drive your business. And at the end of the day, we kind of help map out how you're going to make money, because that's why we're all here. And so when we get beyond structuring and executing a roadmap, and we're just going to switch over to the next slide, please. Thanks. And then from that point, when we get all the facts and all the hard details on your idea, we can kick off our fact finding, which is our discovery. I love this process because it gets so many like-minded individuals into a room to start identifying, what does that customer look like? What is that life cycle? And we kind of go through the W's and the H. We go through the who, what, when, how, and why. And we run that through the entire business model. And from there, we're able to get a good understanding of all the touch points, but also the main objective of your application. And that really comes down to, what problem are we solving here? And at the end of the day, our clients are able to really take home something tangible, something to think about, talk to their customers, and really talk to people who are going to be on their team to say, are we going to not just build an idea, but you're essentially building a business? And that's what we like to facilitate and really give that knowledge to our clients. And from that, the fact finding, we start to go into a design studio. And I love design studios because we don't just bring creatives in here. We bring in product managers, project managers, sometimes developers, our QA lead, all the way to UX and UI designers. And it's not about, are you a creative or aren't you creative? We create a structured environment where ideas just come out in an open environment of creativity, of idea generation. And the whole idea about a design studio is to keep our feedback and our iteration cycles small, iterating fast, and learning fast. And so from that design studio, we use Post-it notes, markers, whiteboards, all over the place. We go for it to really flesh out the core features of the product, but also, who is going to be, touching it from start to finish. Whether it be, a B2C, a B2B, an e-commerce platform. It's really fleshing out all the features and the scope of work that we're going to be doing. So from the design studio, we take all this information, we'll digitize it, we'll use all those facts and figures, and we start to create a sitemap. I always really kind of relate building a product to building a house. You have this idea of where you want to live and what you want to do, but you got to start with a blueprint, an architecture plan. And that really is what we do with site mapping. And with site mapping, we'll identify all the workflows and independent workflows and customer life cycles all on pen and paper. There's nothing beautiful about it. It's actually quite boring, but the idea is that it gives you that architecture plan of this is how we're going to build it. And you can essentially hand that off to any stranger, and they could follow all the arrows and all the diagrams and pretty much understand, this is how the product works. And that's before we even touch design, which is pretty fascinating. And I think site mapping really gives you that full holistic viewpoint of what you're going to build. So after we do the design studio and the fact finding, the product roadmap breaks down into, let's talk about technology. What technology is going to scale with your product? Where is it going to go in the future? What kind of design tools are we going to be using? What other technologies are we driven by APIs? Are we connecting with other services? Are we going to be a white label solution? All those are part of our development discovery process, as well as we do a design discovery process. And from there, we're able to understand what are the deliverables, what exactly are we going to be producing, and also structuring our milestones. And so up until this point, we're using products like Sketch and Envision. And we do a lot of collaboration on Glyphy, which is a great Google tool for site mapping and diagramming. And that's where we are to date, post our design studio. So you have your product roadmap and timeline, and our clients can get a good idea of, this is the budget I'm working with. These are the ideas I want to work with, and this is what the product is really going to look like. And if you don't mind, if we hop to the next slide, we start jumping into pretty much our UX and UI phase. And from the UX and UI phase, we start to identify those core screens. And those can be, we've gone as far as doing pen and paper sketches, all the way to using Balsamiq, which I still use, or we look at Sketch, and we just do basic core wireframes that solve the fundamental purpose of your product. And the core screens can be 3 to 4 to 5 screens, but at least it gives you an idea of what you're going to build, but also kind of starts to build a bigger picture of the business. And through there, we identify the core user flows and start to begin to understand what is that UI going to look like. So with user experience, we try to remove design at this point, because we want to know, what is the experience going to look like? What is interaction design going to look like? How are you getting from point A to point B, as soon as possible? And we always keep in the back of our mind, we got to give the customers what they want. We try to give, the solution to the problem very efficiently in the products that we build. So we've got the UX, we're on Envision, you're clicking through a prototype, and then we start to go into UI. And the user interface is, what emotions is it evoking when you get on that app? We truly believe you could have a beautiful app and it could work terribly, you're going to lose your customer. You could have a very high-functioning application, but if it makes you nauseous when you look at it, you're probably not going to use it. So we blend the two. And it's a fine balance, and we work with some phenomenal UX and UI designers, as well as branding. And that's where the branding comes through. We're able to kind of understand the colors, the typography, also kind of really stitching it all together. And that is where we are able to build a fully functional, clickable prototype. And we love Envision for this. We use Envision Mirror as well to do it on your mobile, or your tablet. And from there, we're able to get everybody involved to say, you can now use this to show to investors, to your potential customers, and that's your clickable prototype. So we've wrapped up a lot of our design, our discovery, and due diligence, which usually takes anywhere from, I'd say, 2 weeks to a month, depending on the scope of work we're working with. And from there, we're ready to engage in our knowledge transfer process to begin our development. And here's where I'll hand it off to Owais.
Thank you. So very eloquently put, that's the beautiful part of building a product, solving the problem that's been identified. Once we've created the idea, which is this entire design phase that we've done and identified how we're going to be creating a product and done the blueprints, we then decide, Now that we do have pixels that have been created, let's put them to code. And this is where the behind the scenes part comes in, which is what we've been working on very hard and is, a huge part of what West Agile Labs does, which is the development phase. And a lot of it just requires making sure everyone knows why we're doing what we're doing, and we have what we call, consistency of knowledge. Like, it's important that our development team knows, our project managers know, why did the client have this idea in the shower? Or why did the client decide to leave his job and say, I want to do this? It's important to know this because that way everybody who is touching the product knows the desire, the will, and the reason why it needs to succeed and where that becomes a business. And these are strong principles we believe in that is very important whenever you're assembling your own team. Make sure anybody who joins your team understands the core reason why you're doing what you're doing. And that's where we bring in good principles and good practices, your discipline, where you plan, you think about why I'm going to do this, when I'm going to do this, what is the outcome supposed to be here. So you take your entire designs, you take all your features, your functionalities, and you say, this is how we're going to code this out. This is the choice of technology I'm going to take. I'm going to use this different tech stack. I'm going to use this infrastructure stack. I have 3 months to build this out, but it's going to take us 9 months to do this. Okay, what can I get done in 3 months? What are some of the core features we can do? And you start to break everything down into small bits, bytes, and pieces that developers can then process. And the people doing that are your product managers, project managers, lead developers, and we go into what we call sprint planning. And this is something that we use for MVP approaches. For products that go beyond MVP, what Corey spoke to is something that ends up happening the week before development occurs. For MVPs, the process that Corey spoke to takes about anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks, and development takes about 4 to 6 months from that perspective. But everything is about planning, making sure that when you're going to do something, you measure thrice, cut once. Very important that we do that. And that's how we get things moving. So I said this last year, I'll run through very quickly. We plan everything out. We lay out a project roadmap. We say we're going to get this thing out in 4 weeks. That's going to be our first sprint cycle length. Next one's going to last us 2 weeks. You'll see something beyond that. And go so on and so forth till you get to your MVP. Along the way, you're consistently getting feedback from people that can touch and feel your product. And if the feedback comes back saying you need to make these changes, we go back a little bit to the drawing board and saying, let's figure out how we can do this. So that when we do actually launch with people who really are going to determine the success of your product, you have some data backing it up that says, yes, I can do this. We could go to the 2 slides beyond this. All right, here. So say you've gone, you're a few months later, you've done your launch and you launch it. You want to make sure that you spend a lot of time observing and soliciting feedback. Because without doing that, you don't know how people are taking in your product. You got to measure a lot. You got KPIs. You got to take a look at analytics. You got to take a look at how are people using my product? What are people saying about my product? Are people actually using it end to end? Did the idea and the solution that we worked on actually solving the problem? Are people telling me there's another problem I need to look at? Do I need to make a pivot or not? This is really, really important for people to do because you don't just, build something and say, go. You build something, you say go, and you watch it. And you say, okay, I need to push it in this direction, I need to push it in that direction. Let me see how people use it. And based on that, you make it better. And that's the iteration process. And that's what Corey spoke about, the feedback loops. So we try to keep the feedback loops as short as possible, as early on as we can. But once you've actually launched the product, you need to make sure the feedback loops are closed. You need to solicit feedback. It's not something that is new. It's something that has been going on for centuries. Everyone needs to understand, hey, every interaction we have, how can I make it better? And that's essentially what product is. Products exist to solve problems, and you got to make sure that when you have done them, you actually are solving the problems, and that's what makes you succeed. And the ability for you to actually pick up on that and say, I'm actually doing this, I can do it better, that's what makes great companies. And that's how you scale businesses. Is you had an idea that we helped create, we built a product, and then that's how you figure out how to scale it into a business. And along the way, you're gonna constantly be able to pick up good people, good talent, and good advising you on what you need to do. And you got to push on that front. So those are some of the things. So to wrap up, we go to the next slide. So the conclusion and takeaways I like for you guys to think about is that the idea that you have really should be the solution to a legit problem or a problem you've identified, because that helps determine product market fit. And if we all agree on that, that's when we kind of come together. And we don't do brainstorming sessions. We like to follow what the Stanford D School has, IDEO does, and Google Design Sprints made this really famous, is that we will like to be very actionable. Brainstorming doesn't really do much. But Google Design Sprint, the principles behind it is that let's bring everyone into the room. Let's say, we all agree this is the problem. This is how we solve it. This is how we're going to implement it. That's really important. And that's the first thing, is that your idea needs to be a solution to a problem. The next one is just something Corey loves talking about.
Yeah, so about iterating fast and often. I'm sure we've all heard all these, sayings about, fail fast and all that. It's so much easier said than done. And coming from, I have definitely failed before at a startup. It was a spectacular failure, and it was something that I learned so much about. And part of iterating is not just about your product, it's about yourself too. I think what I learned is you have to be an informed entrepreneur. And there were a lot of things where I would just, maybe ignore, or maybe just, like a tech stack, or what my product's built on, or certain things, or how do I go from point A to point B? And sometimes you just hope it'll figure itself out. Well, it doesn't. And the idea is to just keep learning and keep understanding and keep asking questions. I think what I've learned actually the past 24 hours at Start and Grind is people say, I have an idea, all right, I have this product, I just don't know where to go next. It's like, well, you're here and you're asking the right questions. And through that there's so many amazing outlets and forums and blogs and people that can help you get to that next level. And I think so many people, what I love about San Francisco and this Bay Area is, a lot of advice is free. And you can always reach out to people to learn more and understand, you're not alone. And I think that's the best part. So iterating fast and often is not only about your product, it's about yourself.
Yep. And, like I said, you got to learn how to measure success. You got to learn whether are you successful, are you failing, and how you act upon it. Saying woe is me and things aren't going well and pointing fingers, blaming is not what helps you get going places. You have to really figure out, okay, what have I done? Why have I done it? And how do I actually make sure that this is going to succeed? So with that, we'd like to turn it over to any questions that people may have. And we thank you for being here in the room and listening to the two of us opine on what we learned at West Agile.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us about what happened with your startup?
Yeah, sure.
What lessons did you learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was in Chicago. It was a food and tech startup. And we were really trying to break into an industry that was not moving. It was kind of a dinosaur, but we kept moving fast, went through an accelerator, had some phenomenal people around us. And sometimes you're in an industry that you just can't break into, or it takes a lot more than yourself and your team. And so from there, we had obviously run out of money, and I needed to go fundraise for myself. And that's where I realized, it's time to get a job and, hit the books again. But creating doesn't have an expiration. You always keep creating. You'll always keep coming up with new ideas. So don't let it stop you.
In product management, when you go out and you deploy products, so you've obviously spent a few months at least, or if not more, in kind of getting your product out. And there is an ethos out there that says you're looking for an aha moment for your consumers to kind of when they're using your product. And I think there's there's other quotes like build your product to delight the customer in the first time they use it. And then there is this kind of parallel universe of product market fit. Do you guys have any frameworks of figuring out how to kind of figure out what your product market fit is without screwing up on that aha moment? Because friends and family is fine, right? You kind of build the product, whether it's an app, whether it's whatever product you guys have, you kind of share it with friendlies, if you will, and more often than not, they're going to give you positive feedback because they're trying to encourage you. But how do you not screw up the aha moment when you actually think you have product market fit? If there's any frameworks for that or any examples, I guess.
Great question.
I think there's no right answer to it. I think one source of inspiration I take is that the people that hate your product the most are your most valuable source of feedback. The people that give you 1 stars on Amazon and the people that write you terrible reviews. It's important that you sort of understand why they did that, because that's kind of a good source of, hey, what do I need to fix my product? As for the aha moment / product market fit, there's no substitute for trying to do as much research as you can before you actually get into stuff. So very, very large projects and agencies and corporations, they spend a lot of money on doing research before they actually get into doing a product. Oftentimes people think they have the right idea and they do exactly that. They go to friends and family who give them positive feedback and say, yep, keep on going, you're going good, not actually telling them what they really need to hear. I'm a person that doesn't hold back. I'll tell clients, I don't think this is gonna work. I'm just one data point. Go solicit some more data points before we actually get there. And we see this a lot where people do go ahead and do that and they launch, and then we see this point like, what's going on here? And I think aha moments really kind of come from you just actually iterating on the thing. Our design team, I mean, like, one of the things they talk about is that you don't make good design at your 2nd or 3rd try. It's really your 11th or 15th is where you actually really come to like, oh wow, this is what it is. And same way with people using your product and actually you looking at data and saying, I gotta look at data, I gotta look at analytics, I gotta look at like how people use my app to see this is how it has to adjust from that perspective.
And I think, along those lines is, go to the source, find out, those customers that you have, go get them. My food startup, I stood in a grocery store days on end, just creeping around, watching people grocery shop. And I was like that guy, I was like, he doesn't have anything in his cart, but he's walking around a grocery store, learning about customers and foot traffic and all those things. I needed to get a hold of moms and dads. So I went to tennis clubs and talked to people and offered to take people out for coffee. And that aha moment, don't be afraid. And one person told me, never fall in love with your product. Once you fall in love, the breakup is even harder because people are going to tell you to change it and you're going to pivot. So always be nimble and flexible enough to know that it's going to help you build a better product, and do it fast. Get something out there, whether it be pen and paper sketch or a full-blown prototype. That beta's got to be important. And the reason why not many people talk about what an alpha is, there's a reason why alphas are even more important, I think, sometimes than betas, because it's going to be very raw, it's going to be very rough. But yeah, family isn't always going to be the best indication of feedback, but a good place to start.
Anyone else for a question? Yeah.
Thank you very much. You told about a great product design. You told about a great code under the hood. Yep. So, but I think for a great product, for a great start, you need some sales, marketing, and later maybe HR team. What you do about this, or you just stop on developing the great product?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we help facilitate that knowledge and growth, right? We don't just churn out products and wish you well. Because at the end of the day, it's a win-win partnership. If our clients win, we win. And the idea is we would love to make those connections that are necessary and help grow companies. So we give them knowledge, right? But we want to set them up for success, and I think that's what we do. I'm sorry.
Why don't you do marketing yourself?
Well, it's something that I think we've always explored, right? It's not the core component of our business, but you're right. There are other services that we're interested in because entrepreneurs need this help and need this service. So you're absolutely right. It's part of this suite of services we're exploring to provide to some of our clients. Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Give them a round of applause.
Everyone?